Never trust anyone who's offended by everything and embarrassed by nothing.
I was having to think about that one when you put it out this week. And I was keen for you to sort of expand on it.
Sure. I think we live in a culture of offence at the moment, and I'm not someone who pontificates against social media. Clearly I use it. I enjoy it. I think that with any massive social change, there's been both positive and negative aspects of it. And one of the negative aspects of it is that it has condensed debate. We don't have time on social media to talk about the nuance. You also have that sense of anonymity where people are willing to just say things that they wouldn't say to your face. They'd actually be much more polite and hear your viewpoint. But it's so easy just to tear someone down. Excuse me. And so living in this environment where it's almost like I heard someone say the other day, offence has become a virtue. It's one of the ways I signal that I'm so virtuous because I'm so royally offended by that. Therefore, I must just be so far above it. And in that culture, we've just created this thing where some people are just offended by everything. And I just think we need to settle down. Even things that I fundamentally disagree with, I don't need to be offended by it. And I certainly don't need to be hostile towards the person that holds that view. And so I have a mistrust of anyone who's constantly banging on about what they're offended by.
Yeah. But then, and with that flip side of embarrassed by nothing, you meaning that in the sense of, but then they never see anything in themselves that could offend someone else.
Right.
And or that should rightfully offend someone else.
Exactly. And that's really, it's a play on this idea of offence is what I'm being offended to everything that's happening out here, where embarrassment's a bit of an internal emotion. Now, pick the word embarrassment rather than guilt or shame. Like shame can become a very negative, and it's a social emotion. But I think that we should be self-reflecting. Like instead of pointing the finger, it's a little bit of a play on that whole idea of, take the speck out of your own eye, the log out of your own eye before you try and take the speck out of others. You're so offended at everything that's happening out here, but you don't stop for a minute to look at your own behaviour and be a bit embarrassed about some of that. Yeah. Like the language that you're using, the fact that you're beating people up. Like we pile on kids. Some of it's horrific. It does my head in. I'm like, wow, how as a community have we got to the point where you think it's virtuous to pile on that young person who said something stupid on social media? But my goodness, if everything I said as a 14, 15, 16-year-old was recorded on social media, I possibly wouldn't be allowed to be a pastor today. And this cancel culture, like cancel them because they say something dumb once. Like, come on. It has to change, and here's why. I think we get to a point where we're living, because of social media, our private and our public lives have merged massively. And that's, in one sense, that can be a good thing. Like, we don't want to be hiding skeletons in our private life. We don't want to be living one way in private and a different way in public. So, again, there's some good aspects to this. But you're developing ideas. I mean, this is a risky format. We're chatting. It's not all scripted. Yeah. Especially when we come to doing a little devotional thing, I'm very confident that I'm going to use the wrong words. I'm going to use theological terms out of place. I'm going to have undeveloped thoughts. But so what? That's part of what this format allows for. We want to demonstrate that we're growing and developing even in our doctrine and theology, right? Yeah. But if you do that publicly and then you get something wrong, or you say something that's a little bit misinformed, or maybe you just hold a viewpoint that currently is socially unacceptable, but then we're going to cancel you across the board. Yeah, I just think we have to get to a point that we develop beyond that, or we're going to end up with just a really shallow. It almost becomes like a form of censor. That only people who fit into exactly this little square and have exactly these ideas do we allow public forum. Everyone else is out. Yeah. And I think that becomes really dangerous.